It used to be it's not polite to talk politics, right? But these days it's really hard to avoid.
Well, now at 9, we're getting an expert involved on topics that are tough to navigate.
We need all the help we can get. Joining us is marriage and family therapist Justin Bastin, who is also an addiction counselor. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us this morning. Can you provide insight for what people who might be wrestling with it right now?
Yeah, I think as a whole, what I think that we're really struggling with and wrestling with is what's called collective trauma and collective grief. And so overall, like with trauma and being able to work through trauma, a huge piece of it is just actually being able to acknowledge that we're struggling. And how tough that is, I think, for a lot of people, because when we think of trauma, we usually differentiate it between big T trauma and little t trauma. So the big T trauma is like being able to go to war or being able to experience something that's really, really huge, where little t trauma is more of like losing a dog or losing someone who's really important to us. Now, I'm not saying which one is which here, but overall, like this is traumatic and this is really impacting us in a pretty significant way.
It really is, and I think what's interesting is how it impacts all of us so differently. What does healing from collective trauma look like? How do we do that?
Well, I first with like being able to kind of acknowledge that this is something I'm struggling with, and then really usually the phases of recovery, what it usually looks like is first, we want to make sure that you're able to find your safety and your stability in your environment, that you feel safe so that you can actually begin to be able to kind of process everything that's going on. And then after that, we need to be able to and allow ourselves to grieve what we've lost. And I think that's maybe what I like to be able to ask people is like, what did you lose in this situation? Did you lose your sense of safety or security? What exactly is lost here? Then after processing through that, it's then restoring relationships, being able and being willing to actually reach out again and being able to really connect with other people. By going through this, we're really developing resilience. That's what this is all about, is developing resilience for these trials and tribulations that we experience and go through.
Well, Justin, we have to go through a lot, like you said, to develop that resilience. But how can we be helpful to loved ones who are struggling with this collective trauma?
Oh, excellent question. I work with a lot of people just in communication where I want them to, I think my favorite acronym is to lover the other person, LUVER. And so to listen, to understand, to validate, to empathize, and then repeat. And so really focusing on that validation and that empathy. And I want you to be able to just sit with them. And I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to sit there and be like, this is hard. You're struggling. I hear you and I love you. And finally, like while you're sitting with them, really work to be able to manage your own emotions and to be able to kind of build up your tolerance for being uncomfortable, for struggling.
And between the COVID pandemic, between everything going on with politics, this is everywhere. How do we talk about it with our kids? We really can't avoid it at this point.
Absolutely. First of all, I would be really curious what the kiddos know already because they are exposed to so much. That way you can really be able to help them and walk them through misinformation, which is really easy to be able to leak through. Help them through those big 3 stages. Make sure to reinforce that they are safe. Make sure to be able to check in with what they're feeling. Kiddos of all ages are very intuitive and very smart. It's not you trying to solve it or to really minimize it, but just sit with them and help to answer with as much factual information as possible.
Some really great advice. Mental health is just so important all the time, but especially right now. Justin, thank you so much.